From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Good afternoon. My name is Kristen Anderson. I am a cataloging librarian here at the Library of Congress, and I'd like to welcome you to the Library of Congress Digital Future and You webcast. Today's guest will be Dominic McDevitt-Parks. For those of you who are listening in real life, which we Wikipedians call RL, please turn off your cell phones and other things that make noise. This session is being recorded. Your remarks, if you make them, are public and will go up on the internet when this webcast is posted. About the only people in the world who like information as much as Library of Congress catalogers are Wikipedians. I started editing Wikipedia. I went back and looked. It was the end of February 2010. And by the time December 2011 came around, I was getting curious. Who else was doing this? This was the 10th anniversary of Wikipedia, and I saw that there was going to be a party at the National Archives. So, a little concerned as to who I might find, I went down. I decided if it's the National Archives, well, it has to be okay. And to my surprise, a 19-year-old fellow stood up and said, "We're going to do the International Conference for Wikipedia here next year. Let's put in a bid and let's do it." And I looked at this 19-year-old kid and I said, "Wow. That sounds like a dream." I said, "This can't be true." But sure enough, dreams came true, and he was the coordinator of our international conference, Wikimania 2012, held in July here in Washington, D.C. We had guests from 87 countries in attendance, and to my great surprise, a beautiful, beautiful reception right here at the Library of Congress in the Great Hall, where it was announced that we would have a Wikipedian in residence at the Library of Congress to work on a world digital library. Wikipedia and the Library of Congress share a common dream, and that's Thomas Jefferson's dream of a collection of books and information on all topics and in all languages. And since this is 2012, we are updating that dream a little bit and saying for everybody with the help of the internet. Our guest today, Dominic, came on at the National Archives in spring of 2011. This is going to be his second summer at Archives. I thought I would give this introduction and tell you all about the great dream of all information for everybody in all languages. But I realized when I thought about Dominic's work that the important thing about his work is that he's using the computer and the internet and solid, verifiable information to help bring people together. Dominic has organized the first extravaganza up at the National Archives. We went up and scanned in material. People are especially fond of photographs of battleships on Wikipedia. And he has devised ways to upload things quickly to the Wikimedia Commons so that this material may be reused. His first task at Archives was uploading the materials that Archives had already digitized in high-resolution scans. With that, it's been a very interesting 2 years with Wikipedia. I am now on the board of Wikimedia DC, our Wikipedia club. I urge you, if you haven't met another Wikipedian, by all means, introduce yourself. Come to our meetups, come to our events. If you're not here in Washington, D.C., start a meetup yourself, or come down to Washington and come to our meetups and come visit your books here at the Library of Congress. So without further ado, Dominic has been a Wikipedian in residence at the National Archives since May 2011. He has a bachelor's degree in history from Reed College. He is currently studying archives management at Simmons in Boston. He's been a Wikipedian since 2004. Dominic, tell us all about what's happened at archives.
Thank you, Kristen, and thank you for inviting me. First, most important, there is swag in the back, buttons and stickers, Wikipedia buttons and stickers, so don't forget to grab some. I titled the talk, Cultural Institutions and Wikipedia, a Mutually Beneficial Relationship. First of all, because I want to emphasize that, hopefully by the end of my talk, you'll get that Wikipedia and cultural institutions have a real alignment of interests. Secondly, I don't want this to just be a case study about what we've done at the National Archives. I really want to be able to give people pointers about how to get involved, especially Library of Congress people, so that the Library of Congress can get involved with Wikipedia as well. So I hope it's a learning experience and that there's actually, good results that come out of this. So first, I want to just talk about some of the basics about Wikipedia, so we all have kind of a baseline of knowledge. First of all, Wikipedia is a nonprofit. It's run by the Wikimedia Foundation, a nonprofit charitable organization. Its mission is an educational mission. It's in that way it's very similar to cultural institutions, but there is no editorial staff. The Wikimedia Foundation doesn't actually pay anyone to vet the content or anything. That's all done through community processes online. And also, I wrote that it's a family of projects, and the reason I say that is because Wikipedia is the flagship project to the Encyclopedia, the most well-known project. But really, for our purposes, for cultural institutions, it's not the only relevant project, because the Wikimedia Foundation actually hosts a whole series of educational reference projects. I highlighted some of them here. Wikipedia, you all know about, but these other two, I think, are the most relevant to cultural institutions, and that's Wikimedia Commons and Wikisource. Wikimedia Commons is the file repository for all the Wikimedia projects. So if we're uploading things and doing digital restoration or dealing with metadata, that's not happening in the encyclopedia. That's happening in Wikimedia Commons. Wikisource is essentially the text repository. Transcriptions and things like that go on there, and arrangement of text for the web and bibliographic data. Some of those things are actually a lot more relevant to an archives, especially, which doesn't really do a lot of interpretive activity as opposed to museums, than even Wikipedia. And they each have their own online community like Wikipedia. So we've actually found, we're working with not just Wikipedia, but these other projects. And finally, I wrote, it's about freedom. And what I mean by that is Wikipedia is a wiki. Anybody can contribute to it, but one of the foundational principles is that all contributions are freely licensed, which means that every time you save and edit, you're agreeing to release your content freely, so that anybody can use, modify, redistribute it. That's the beauty of Wikipedia, and that's why it's an educational project. Now, one thing I'm going to be talking about a lot is GLAM, which is galleries, libraries, archives, and museums. We on Wikipedia we call the group of Wikipedians who work with cultural institutions. We kind of call the effort the GLAM-Wiki initiative. And so I wanted to highlight here just kind of the three main reasons why cultural institutions and Wikipedia work so well together. And most of these are kind of should obviously come from the things that I just mentioned about the whole Wikimedia effort. So first, Wikipedia as an ally. It's an educational project. It's not, or I should say, unlike Flickr or Twitter or some of these other tools, which are, which can be useful, image hosts or social media channels. Those are businesses, though, and Wikipedia really exists in order to do the same sorts of things that cultural institutions exist for, to spread knowledge, and that's about it. Second, Wikipedia is a volunteer workforce, which is a nicer way of saying that we use Wikipedia for crowdsourcing. And so, there have been a lot of efforts, especially by smaller cultural institutions, but by all sorts to do crowdsourcing on their own, on their own website or their own little silos, and it's really hard. But Wikipedia is an existing online community of people that are already doing the sorts of things that you want done with your material. And then finally, when I say Wikipedia is the ultimate platform, it's the 5th most visited website on the internet. And so if your institution's mission has anything to do with increasing access to your holdings, then you're much better off putting your things on Wikipedia than trying to somehow, generate traffic to your own website. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Finally, I just wanted to address from the beginning the reliability question, and I'm going to kind of address it by avoiding the question right now, because as I said, the ways we're using Wikipedia are for things like adding value to our collections or increasing access, and those are things that it doesn't actually really matter to us what the quality of the content is in its present state. And what I mean by that, there's a debate to be had whether Wikipedia is reliable or not. All I'm saying is you can't deny is that Wikipedia is where all of the people are going on the internet. So it's in our interest to go there as well. What goes along with that is if you're one of the people that thinks that Wikipedia isn't very good quality, then we're really lucky that the 5th most popular website, which is also the most popular educational website on the internet, is also the only one that you're empowered to change. So if you think it's bad, then it's actually more incumbent upon you to fix it. And that's kind of, I think, the position that cultural institutions should be increasingly taking as part of their institutional mission. So now I'm going to get more into what we've actually done at the National Archives. First, I wanted to start by kind of talking about where this came from, why the National Archives has a Wikipedian residence and how it fits into kind of the broader movement and what's been going on at the National Archives. So this is just in June, the National Archives released its most recent open government plan for 2012 through 2014. And on the first page, in the message from David Ferriero, from the archivist, he wrote, that, well, first sentence is a little self-serving, but I'll just read this that I've highlighted. We welcome the Wikipedian residents and continue to collaborate on projects, scanathons, and to contribute high-resolution digital images to the Wikimedia Commons. Our work with Wikipedia is changing the way we think about our work. I think that's really important, that this is not anymore just an experiment, but this is really an outgrowth of the National Archives strategy for the future. And so, making its holdings accessible and visible on the web and putting them out there and giving them to the public is really part of, the whole open government plan or initiative that's been going on. And so one of the great things about the open government plan that kind of demonstrates that is that there are mentions of Wikipedia or the other Wikimedia projects kind of interwoven throughout it. So I just highlighted here another point where it mentions Citizen Archivist Dashboard. I'll mention that a little bit later. It also features National Archives records for transcription on Wikisource, the free library that anybody can improve. And over the next 2 years, the National Archives will explore ways to improve the National Archives transcription pilot project, as well as transcription on Wikisource. So this is in, the open government plan for the National Archives. So I was really happy about that. Now, if you've been paying attention to the National Archives at all, you know that the National Archives is going through what's termed the transformation, what that really means is, since David Ferriero came on board, it's really this effort to reorient the whole agency essentially for the future. And so these are the 6 pillars. I'm not really going to read through all the description, but I think that you can really tell that I think our work with Wikipedia is essentially relevant to each one of them. One NARA out in front, an agency of leaders, a great place to work, a customer-focused organization, and an open NARA. And actually, just the one NARA thing, one of the great things that I found is that the National Archives is a nationwide network of all these different facilities and presidential libraries. It's not just the building on here in DC. And so Wikipedia is a way to bring together all these different facilities. I was just at SAA last week talking to an archivist from our Riverside facility. Each of these different locations has its own local Wikipedia editor community. And we are gearing up to be able to connect to these communities with each of their local institutions. So it's a way that we've been able to, or that we're hoping to, especially more in the future, make a lot of closer connections, because if I'm doing my work well, then I'll actually be touching a lot of different offices and facilities throughout the whole agency. So part of this transformation is one word that has been coming a lot from the National Archives phrase citizen archivist. This is something that David Ferriero started using a couple years ago, and now there's the Citizen Archivist Initiative, which the flagship project is the Citizen Archivist Dashboard, which I'll show you later. So I just wanted to quickly, I'll play this video and you can hear in his own words what Citizen Archivist, what it means to him. Oh, and this quote is also from the Open Government Plan. The National Archives has changed the way it traditionally approached providing access to these records by introducing a role for the citizen archivist.
An independent researcher is any civilian, non-government employee who operates out of the National Archives, performing research for themselves, clients, or practically anyone. I'm Jonathan Webb-Dice. I'm an independent researcher. I was lucky enough to be hired to research Revolutionary War records and had to look in the records of the Senate. I found a diary in those files that was dated 1780. It was put in the records of the Senate in 1836, and basically lay unrecognized until this day. I apparently was the first person to understand its importance and its significance and flag it.
And I call that citizen archivist. I'm David Ferriero. I'm the archivist of the United States. We have 10 billion items in the archives collection, and we don't have the staff to actually work through and read every piece of paper that we have in the collection. So that's why engaging the people who are actually using the collection is a way for enhancing what we know about them.
What I'm doing now is inking. This is a stage in comics that comes after penciling.
My name is John White. I'm an educational cartoonist and designer living here in Washington, D.C. The National Archives maintains a feature on their website called Today's Document. What I thought to do in early 2010 was to take each one of those pieces a few times a week and reinterpret it with an eye for a younger audience.
I don't think anyone has yet drawn General Washington just after the Battle of Trenton eating a burger.
We're actually experimenting with various kinds of activities to engage citizen archivists. And we've just launched a wiki, an interactive website, where we can encourage our researchers to share with us what they learned.
We're doing some volunteer work, digitizing the enlistment papers of Indian scouts. We will be putting the records online and linking them through the new Our Archives wiki.
This is my website, todaysdocument.com. The actual event here is the impeachment of Andrew Johnson. This is a scene from I suppose, a heaven of great presidents. You'll notice that Andrew Johnson is ostracized.
We've all seen these documents on microfilm, and we've all seen them in reproductions, but to actually find one is extremely rare. It's been pulled from the records. It was sent to conservation, who then did some preservation work on it, and it's now currently in the vaults, I believe. It's locked away.
Give us some ideas of other ways that we might involve you in this citizen archivist program.
Okay, so, and I guess my kind of overall argument is, Wikipedians are citizen archivists, which means they're, they're part of our overall effort through adding value to the collections and things like that. So, what do I do personally, or what's the point of me, right? As a Wikipedian in residence, first and foremost is access. Wikipedia is where the people are. We're trying to increase the visibility of holdings. And second is community engagement, and this is a really big part of the transformation. Is that the new digital revolution, I guess you could say, that we're going through is really making our presence on the web more of a dialogue, and through Wikipedia, we're really working with the people that are engaging with our holdings. And then finally, cultural change, meaning within the institution, that this is a part of this broader cultural shift that I've been talking about, and we've been doing a lot of outreach within the National Archives as well. So this is Nicole, and she was a French partisan in World War II. She captured 25 Nazis. And with that gun, I think. This is to me, this is a really cool thing, and I'm starting here rather than talking about work that we've done on Wikipedia articles, because I want to try to make Wikipedians real to you. So this is an image from the National Archives that was scanned at what we call a scanathon at the National Archives, scanned by a Wikipedian. And maybe it was somebody in this room right now. Yes. It was Kristen, or it was Jim. Okay. This document, which the amazing thing that you'll find if you go and look through records that haven't even been digitized yet at the National Archives, is that everyone looks iconic except that nobody's seen it yet because it's stuck in the stack somewhere. So Wikipedians came in on a Saturday, scanned documents. It's a win-win because this is the kind of thing that they're interested in. They can take those scans home, upload them, and use them in articles. And now Nicole, that's her nom de guerre, obviously, so she actually has an article now. And for the National Archives, we can take those scans and we can put them in our online catalog, and actually this image and all of the images that have been scanned by Wikipedians have been or are in the process of being described at the item level in the National Archives online catalog, so that they're now accessible to researchers in the future, using those scans that were produced by volunteers. So I think this is something that maybe people don't expect from Wikipedians, because you're expecting volunteerism, or you're expecting people at home on their computer, probably like a nerdy teenage boy. So for me, the big breakthrough is usually whenever you can really bring the Wikipedia community in the real world together with staff from institutions. What I really want to emphasize is that Wikipedians are interested in knowledge. That's why they're spending in spreading, increasing knowledge, or whatever little niche that they're interested in. But that's why they're working on an encyclopedia in their free time. We really need to get over this concept of like crowdsourcing or this like weird new thing, and think about this really as being it's really just volunteerism. It's volunteerism in the digital age. But I think the best way to kind of show you that these are real people is I just want to show you a video of an editathon that happened at the Smithsonian Archives of American Art, which also had a Wikipedian in residence at the time, who you'll see.
Well, today we're doing a editathon, which is the collaboration between an institution and volunteers to edit Wikipedia articles. Editathons are usually done with a purpose, like a specific topic area. So today we're working with the Armory Show, which is a significant showing of American artists.
And it's not just about writing arts articles, it's about writing quality articles that can be utilized by, be a starting point for researchers, students, people making bets at bars, When there's an article about every single Seinfeld episode, and most of them are high quality, some of the best articles, was the best resourced, best written, most neutral, encyclopedic articles. Every artist that was in the Armory Show does not have an article, and that is a problem to me.
This is the first time I've participated in an editathon, but what I'm liking about it is that people are really able to help each other. Usually you imagine people alone in a room, doing their own thing, but there's something incredibly warm and social about having people working side by side, even if they're all at their own laptops.
Yeah, you're always behind your screen name, and you're always you tend to fall into a niche where you have a hobby. And that doesn't mean that other Wikipedians are going to have that hobby. And it's really important to get people involved in other things because, when you get feedback, you make better product.
Outcomes page on our project page, you'll find information about
you bring in the volunteer experts and you have the experts who actually know the topic area, and you can create quite a lot.
These are the images from our first Scanathon last year. So I just want to talk a little bit about, the first event that we held last August 2011, that was our first event at Archives 2 in College Park. It was really an experiment. I wasn't sure how it was going to go. We lined up all these different activities to try to entice people to come on a Saturday morning to the National Archives. I gave a presentation, we gave a free lunch, we gave a tour of the facility, and we went back into the closed stacks. So I was hoping, it would be like a cool thing. And then of course, we're at the National Archives, and we got all these people here, so we wanted to take them into the research rooms to do something and get them all research cards. I think none of the people that came, and probably almost none of the Wikipedians who have ever come had research cards to begin with. It was 2 hours at the end of the day. I thought people would want to do, edit articles related to the National Archives holdings. or it would be okay if they tagged things or did other not even like citizen archivist things that we had lined up that weren't Wikipedia related, or just whatever they wanted to do. And we had a scanner set up, and we had pulled some records, and people really gravitated towards that. And so it sounds a little dry just coming in to scan things. But I think what I've discovered is, especially for this crowd, it's kind of fun. Doesn't tax your brain a lot. It's kind of fun to sit around a table and with some other nerdy people handling these historic documents, and you just get to chat about them. What it turned out, most people were actually every event since then has been rather than what we called a backstage pass, just a scanathon. Because that's what people liked, and it was actually probably one of the most useful things from the National Archives perspective too, or the easiest sell to all the National Archives people. People are going to come in and scan for you. But of course, there's all sorts of, depending on what sort of institution you have, you may not have an institution that even necessarily has a lot of unique holdings if you're like a public library or something. But there's all sorts of ways that cultural institutions can use their space, their expertise, or whatever, to engage with the Wikipedia community in the real world. So like I listed special tours, talks, workshops, like a public program at a public library, a workshop on Wikipedia editing, or editathons as opposed to scanathons like we just saw. So as Kristen mentioned, kind of the culmination of this let's just scan was the extravaganza, which was really the concept was, okay, every time we do one of these events, people tell me afterwards, like, oh, I had a lot of fun, but I wish we had more time to scan because it was just at the end of the day. So instead, we did a whole week or 4 days of scanning, and instead of there were no tours, no lunch. It was just, we're going to come and scan, which really freed us up to not have to, you wouldn't have to reserve lecture rooms or get a speaker or anything. David Ferriero came to one of them. And so it was like, we can do this every day. We can pick a theme for the day. We can do it in the evening. And so it was one day was women's suffrage themed. One day was NASA documents. And people came in. Most people that came in stayed the whole 4 hours. So they came at 5 p.m. after work, I guess, and stayed until 9 o'clock when the archives closed. So we had probably 12 or 15 people that came over the course of the week, and by the end we had 50 gigabytes of data, which we're still processing. So I mean, this was really exciting to me. But I want to talk a little bit more about Wikimedia Commons, since this is what we're talking about. People are uploading things and are scanning things and uploading them to Wikimedia Commons. Wikimedia Commons is the multilingual repository of free media, which has tagging people engaged in digital restoration and work on metadata. So the important thing here is there is an actual online community on Wikimedia Commons itself, people that like images and photography and things like that. Along with these scanathons, which don't really scale, we're not going to scan the 10 billion documents by inviting a few Wikipedians in the area to come to the research rooms on Saturdays. That's really a lot more about engagement. But what we've done also is started uploading our the National Archives digitized files that it already has. And we're actually uploading the high-resolution TIFF files from the scans, which you can't even get from NARA's own catalog. So so far we've uploaded 100,000 files. The main reason we are doing this is it means that any Wikipedia author who's writing something can just use any of those images in a Wikipedia article. They don't need to go to NARA. They may not have even known the National Archives held this document, but instead they just go to Wikimedia Commons, see an image they want, and now it's in an article, and that's to our benefit because more people can see it. So we're really just making it a lot easier for them. But another benefit of putting things on Wikimedia Commons is that there's a community there that actually works with the images. One of the main things that they do is that every image that's uploaded should be categorized topically. This is like a tag on Flickr, except that when you upload something to Flickr, you're tagging your own things. You have your own account. But this is a collaborative project. So we've uploaded all these files without categories and enlisted the community to undertake a community effort to tag things. The National Archives actually, its online catalog, archives.gov, has a tagging feature. That's about a year old, about as long as we've been, since we started uploading things to Wikimedia Commons. And it has about like maybe 5,000 tags in it. Because who's going to go to archives.gov to tag, really? You know, there's no community there. There's no existing effort there. It's, you know, maybe there's a few researchers that come across something and see there's a little tag button and they tag something. But Wikimedia Commons is a really, you know, an ongoing effort where that's actually part of the community's culture. So we've, over 30,000 of the files have been categorized, which includes over 80,000 total categories because some of them have more than one. So our, you know, one of the things that we need to work on in the future is we can easily extract all that data because it's an open, Wikipedia is an open project. We need to figure out a way how to integrate that back into archives.gov. Because the National Archives online catalog wasn't really designed with that in mind, that the data would be coming from elsewhere. And then also over 1,000 of the images that we've uploaded just in the last year have been put into articles so far. So I just want to show you how that works in practice. Categorizing. So this is an image from the National Archives that we uploaded. Hopefully you can kind of see at the bottom. There are some topical categories there. People of the United States Coast Guard, women in the United States military, African American soldiers. So that's for Wikimedia Commons. They do that to make things more, you know, more discoverable on their own project. But that's also, you know, kind of metadata that we can take advantage of, hopefully at some point in the future. So one of the things that we've been doing is we created a whole workflow for categorizing things because we uploaded so many tens of thousands of documents that we actually we have this progress chart of every National Archives series that we've uploaded. So you can click through to that and then go through to individual images and it'll tell you if it's been done or not. So really we're trying to foster a community effort around our holdings on Wikimedia Commons. One of the cool things is that we weren't one of the things that we weren't expecting when we uploaded things to Wikimedia Commons was there's all these additional eyes on everything that we're uploading because of the categorizing or just because of the community there. And so one of the things we found is people started reporting errors. And these were things that have been in the National Archives catalog for a decade or something. And there's no mechanism on archives.gov really, unless you go to like a main contact page or something, to report an error in the metadata. So people started like coming to me personally in my discussion page on Wikipedia and saying, there's a problem with this metadata, or this, or this is these images are switched in the catalog, and they had been like that for years. So this is a screenshot of our error reporting page that we've created, so that we can try to have a workflow here for fixing this metadata. And there have been hundreds of reports. And the interesting thing here, what it really kind of demonstrates is the archivists that are creating these descriptions can't be subject matter experts in everything that they're describing. They might be describing battleships one day, but some women's suffrage protests the next day. And a lot of the archival descriptions are bare bones anyway. But there was no mechanism for reporting errors, and a lot of the people on Wikipedia, I would say for any given topic, there is somebody on Wikipedia who is more of a subject matter expert than whoever described that item in the online catalog, because they're the ones that spend their all day long writing about battleships or whatever. So some of these error reports are really intricate. Like, this is not the USS Pennsylvania, it's the USS Idaho, because there's a thing that sticks this way instead of that way. And they can really tell. So I mean, for me, that's really cool. So I want to talk a little bit more about getting into talking about Wikipedia itself, about the visibility of the project. So archives.gov in 2011 got about 17 million views. And the other side of this pie is not Wikipedia. It's the one article on Wikipedia about the United States. A single page on Wikipedia got 20 million views in that same time frame. And this article about the United States incorporates 3 images from the National Archives. One of the founding documents, a photo of D-Day, that kind of stuff. So all of the effort that was put into archives.gov over the last 10 or 15 years, creating all of those scans, digitizing things, the online catalog, all of that has been seen fewer times than this one page on Wikipedia, and those 3 National Archives documents that were lucky enough to be put there. So I wanted to try to figure out an approximation of what about everything on Wikipedia that's about, or that incorporates National Archives holdings. So a conservative way to estimate that would be just the things that have been, just the articles that use images that have been tagged as being from the National Archives. And that's about 900 million views. So it really dwarfs archives.gov. And I don't think that's a bad thing, because archives.gov, the National Archives web presence, its own site, is the source of authority for a lot of this. This is where if the images come from archives.gov, they're sourced to the National Archives. That's where the metadata comes from, and that's not a problem. They just happen to be being seen somewhere else, but with the same, hopefully the same educational outcome. So Wikipedia itself, I'll just quickly go through a few things about it. It's actually a kind of a traditional encyclopedia, which sometimes people don't really think about. Which means that, what I mean by that is that it's a tertiary source, and all of its kind of foundational content guidelines really come from that. The neutral point of view, verifiability, no original research. Essentially, what that means is every article should be fair, and facts should be cited using reliable sources. Most searchers go to Wikipedia, not your site, and Wikipedia is the encyclopedic context for your holdings. A lot of times it's similar to the educational materials that cultural institutions are creating themselves, except that you can actually create things on Wikipedia and change it, and that's where the people are seeing it. In the video I showed earlier, which was from 2010 actually, of David Ferriero introducing the concept of citizen archivist, he talked about today's document. Today's document is a popular Tumblr and a mobile app for the National Archives. So we've actually gotten involved with trying to add encyclopedic context for those documents that are being featured on today's document. So one of the first things that we did when I came to the National Archives was we challenged the Wikipedia community to create an article on the same day as a future document that was going to be featured. And the way we challenged them was to say, if you can get it in that little did you know section on the main page of Wikipedia, which is kind of like a minimal vetting process for new articles, then we'll feature it on our site and kind of do a tie-in. This is our first success. Howard Perry was the first Black Marine recruit, and that this portrait of him, which along with the little tidbit from the article, the portrait itself was actually on the main page, was on the main page on the same day as it was the document of the day, and the article itself is actually about the desegregation of the U.S. Marine Corps. Some Wikipedian, in the space of 2 days, was inspired to write like an article from scratch of many thousands of words, and it has like I think 100 citations in it now, just on the basis of this document. So now, if you go to the today's document page on archives.gov, you'll see a little box that will alert you that there's this article is an online resource related to the document, and we also featured it on the Tumblr. So it's kind of interesting if you think for the institution, somebody created this great educational resource about this document for almost nothing, because all we did was gave them a little credit. Normally, this page would have gotten a few thousand views, but this document on the main page of Wikipedia for just 8 hours got 5 million views. So it's kind of a huge benefit for the institution, and really there was almost no expenditure other than just lending our credibility. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about Wikisource. Wikisource is actually, I think, it turned out, it's a really easy sell for archivists. We're not creating any secondary source or any interpretive material about our holdings, which sometimes makes archivists a little nervous. Archivists like to collect things and sometimes show them to people, but they're not really like museum people usually, where they really get into. The National Archives is a little different because it does have exhibits and things, but that's not really the normal part of how an archivist, especially the kind of person that's doing processing, how they think about things. But you can really see the benefit in transcribing a textual document, which makes it searchable and everything. So Wikisource is a project for collaboratively transcribing, proofreading, translating, and arranging textual documents. And when I say arranging, I mean that because, which you'll see, a finished text on Wikisource actually is arranged for web viewing, which is very different from some other things like Project Gutenberg or Internet Archive, which you might be familiar with. As I talked about before, we were uploading all these documents to Wikimedia Commons. Some of the things that we uploaded were textual documents, which then can be transcribed on Wikisource. So we've had hundreds of pages transcribed, and some validated, over 100 validated by a second editor. I'll talk a little bit more about what I mean by that. Because the great thing about Wikisource is there's already kind of a community process in place for vetting transcriptions. Okay, so this is our feed of our uploads that we were doing. So these are textual documents that we've uploaded, and any this is how a document looks once it's been uploaded on Wikimedia Commons. You can kind of see the beginning of the metadata below, but what's interesting there is this little button that I've highlighted, which says transcribe this document. So any Wikipedian, this is one entry point for transcribing documents. If you're on Wikipedia or you're an existing editor, if you go to any of the records for these documents that we've uploaded, you'll see a transcribe button, and this is what you'll see when you click on it. There's instructions at the top, and then the way that transcription works on Wikisource is it's side by side. There's an empty text box for you to type into. There's the document on the right side. This is just the instructions. Really, the reason we did this was that Wikisource is this sister project of Wikipedia, but it has a much smaller community. So we're trying to drive people who may be already editors of Wikimedia projects, but not, as we call them, Wikisourcers. So we really wanted to bring people in. This is what the main page of Wikisource looked like at one point. You'll see this Susan B. Anthony petition, which is a really cool document, is from the National Archives. This is a featured document now that was transcribed by Wikisource. And then also on the bottom right, you'll see that the National Archives Wiki project is featured. Here, this is our kind of hub on Wikisource. This is what we call a wiki project. And the point here is there's actually on Wikipedia also, there's a whole host of pages that are for the editors, where the editors do their collaboration, that are not in the encyclopedia and that most readers never see. So this is where all the nitty-gritty work goes on. This is the typical workflow for a transcription of a document. And you'll see, first we have to retrieve the image, maybe convert the file to a JPEG, create an index page, which is where the bibliographic data lives. Somebody does the first pass of proofreading it. Somebody has to validate, an independent editor validates that, and then the page has to go and be presented, arranged for the web. So this is what a proofreading looks like. You can see there's actually a lot of intricate formatting there, and that's what I mean by you'll see when we get to the final product that it's actually gonna look like the document and not just a text dump. But this is this is a PDF file, so there's actually several pages to it, but the way Wikisource's software works, it shows you one page at a time, side by side. And then you'll see at the bottom there's buttons with colors. That's how page status is tracked. The first time if it hasn't been started yet, it's red. Yellow is for the first proofreading. Green is for validated. So this is an index page, and you can see the pages with all the different colors on them. So you can see this is an in-progress document. This document actually doesn't have a lot of metadata, but this is also where all the metadata will be displayed up top. And this is a completed transcription. So this is a court document. It actually, you can see some of the formatting. That's the end product for Wikisource. That's a completed document. For the National Archives, though, our end product is putting this transcription in our online catalog. For now, the best we can do is putting the link to the transcription in our online catalog. And the next step is as the online catalog is in the process of being overhauled, there will eventually be a transcription field in the catalog. But for now, if you're just a random National Archives researcher and you come across this document that somebody else on this external site has transcribed for you, now you can click through and get the actual text of the document, because the National Archives has been partnering with Wikisource and is tracking the transcriptions and knows what's going on, so it can add the links. There is another entry point for Wikisource, and this is the Citizen Archivist dashboard, which I mentioned earlier, which is which lives on archives.gov and is, for the National Archives, their public-facing effort to bring in citizen archivists to do a lot of different things, like tagging, uploading documents they've scanned, indexing the census, but transcribing is one of those. So if you go to the Citizen Archivist dashboard, click on that transcribe tab, you'll see this, which directs you to transcribe documents on Wikisource. So there's a gallery of images there. Some of them look kind of cool. Click on one, and this looks familiar. So you might be a random person on the internet that was looking at archives.gov. You're not a Wikipedia editor, but now you've been directed to this page where you can transcribe a document as well, and has the instructions at the top. So the idea is you shouldn't need to already know how. So far, we've 71 documents have been fully transcribed and are now linked from the National Archives website or online catalog. And these numbers are actually different, I noticed, from the other page, but over 400 pages transcribed and over 120 validated. So I talked about these 3 projects, the 3 Wikimedia projects, but the last thing I want to talk about in this that we've done at the National Archives is what we've been doing internally. So for me, one of the exciting things is the National Archives has this internal collaboration network, which is a staff network on Jive, where it's essentially discussion boards, blogs. So we have a group called Ask the Wikipedian, and the idea here is National Archives employees are dispersed around the country or in different offices, but really they should all be involved in Wikipedia. It shouldn't just be one person. So this is where they can reach out. I can talk to them or whatever. So there's kind of some examples here. I don't know if you can read it, but the second one is, as I was saying, somebody from the Riverside regional facility on the other side of the country who I never would have been able to get in touch with before, just kind of asked a question. And now we're going to be teaching them how to edit things related to their holdings, and maybe we'll have an event at Riverside. Finally, I just wanted to give you a little bit of a bigger picture. I mentioned before the GLAM-Wiki initiative, and really the point here is that there's a broader community there's a lot of Wikipedians who are interested in working with cultural institutions. And so what we've been doing, kind of as my more Wikipedian hat on rather than National Archives staff, is just trying to build the community effort on Wikipedia so that there's this group of ready allies for cultural institutions if they need help getting involved. I wanted to start out by mentioning kind of one of the first GLAM projects that we did in the US was this project called Wiki Loves Art in 2009. It was this radical idea where art museums around the country would, for one day, even if they had kind of restrictive policies about photography, let Wikipedians into the building to take pictures of art so that they could use them on Wikipedia. Which actually, if you think about it, is not really the best way to get pictures of art. People going into a museum and taking pictures with their personal cameras. It should be, the professional photos that the institution takes itself. But at the time it was really exciting. So this is Jimmy Wales, the founder of Wikipedia, who did this video. The Brooklyn Museum put out this video. They were one of the partners. And you can see how exciting it was at the time.
So I'm really excited about Wikipedia Loves Art. For me, this is one of the most innovative things that I've seen come out of the community in a really long time. For me, it's fun to contrast what things are like today versus what things were like a few years ago. I remember a few years ago, I would get nasty emails from museums because we had some tiny little thumbnail of a public domain artwork on Wikipedia. And now the perception of Wikipedia in the public mind has changed so much that you guys are able to go out in the museums with their cooperation, take photos, which of course helps the museum promote art and promote culture. I'm very, very excited about all of this.
Okay, now I want to show you, this is what it's like today. Last month we had, which Kristen mentioned, the International Conference of Wikipedians. It was over 1,000 people came to DC from around the world. David Ferrier, the Archivist of the United States, gave the closing plenary address. So obviously I'm not going to show all of it, but I just wanted to show you like a minute. And you'll see how this is not coming from a Wikipedia person. This is coming from an important person in the cultural sector.
Our work with Wikipedia is not only good enough, it's great for us because it takes our goals of transparency, public participation, and collaboration to a new level. And since that first meeting, the National Archives has continued to collaborate with the Wikimedia community. We've hosted several events on our sites across the country, including a multi-day GLAM camp, DC, last February, as well as the first Wikipedian Scanathon in Kansas City at our regional facility there earlier this summer, an event at the Reagan Library in Southern California, and several more in the DC area. Texts from the National Archives that have been transcribed and verified on Wikisource are linked to directly from our catalog on archives.gov. Wikimedia Commons now contains over 90,000 digital images from our records, and more will continue to be added. We value the contributions Wikimedians have made as citizen archivists, and we share many of the same values with the Wikimedia Foundation: collaboration, innovation, and the sharing of free knowledge. You know, when the bank robber Willie Sutton was asked why he robbed so many banks, Sutton replied, "Because that's where the money is." The Archives is involved with Wikipedia because that's where the people are.
Okay, so, and I think if any of you know Ed Summers from the Library of Congress, that's where the quote came from, his blog. So really, I just wanted to show you, how much, things have changed, and it's really, to me, I think it's really about Wikipedia and cultural institutions have been kind of growing together and at the same time. There's still a lot of cultural institutions who are still learning about the promise of the web and still kind of just starting to reach beyond their own little website using social media and things like that. So they're really kind of, there's really a transformation going on in cultural institutions and access, but at the same time, over that same period of time, Wikipedia itself has been growing a lot in seriousness and, kind of better understanding how it can achieve its own mission. So that was Wikipedia Loves Art in 2009. This year, starting in October, which is Archives Month, and also Open Access Week, October and November, we're running Wikipedia Loves Libraries, also in parentheses, archives and historical societies and related institutions. But the idea here is really it's going to be a national campaign or possibly global to try to encourage people to open their doors to Wikipedians or to somehow just start to build bridges with the Wikipedia community. So we actually did a pilot last fall, Wikipedia Loves Libraries, and that was the Reagan Library event and one other event here in DC at the National Archives and a couple of other institutions, but it was really just the people that, those of us that were already part of the GLAM-Wiki initiative, the institutions that we were already connected with, and we had events there. But really we want to go big and try to make this a way to foster new connections. And for me, the National Archives is already this, over 40 facilities. So we can have a national event just on our own. But really, we want it to be a way to bring in new institutions that maybe have never had any contact with Wikipedia before. So I want to talk about a couple of other things that I haven't been involved in personally as part of the National Archives, but a couple of other ideas of ways that cultural institutions can get involved. So one thing that's very relevant to the Library of Congress is authority control. And there's currently an ongoing effort going on Wikipedia to link articles about people on Wikipedia with their VF records, the person authority records. So let me just, so right now the German Wikipedia has over 220,000 articles linked to authority records. 145,000 of those are VF records. Right now, OCLC has a Wikipedian in residence, a new Wikipedian in residence. Their current project is to add over 250,000 links on the English Wikipedia to their corresponding VF records. This is what it will look like. This is Dostoevsky's Wikipedia article. At the bottom, you'll see I highlighted there's just a little bar that says authority control, and there's links to the authority records. So you'll see Library of Congress is there. PND is the German National Library, I think, and VF. This to me is really exciting. What it means, I think we need to. I mean, this is for the reader. This is maybe kind of useful, but we really need to think about what does this mean for us in the future, because now we're going to have links between our records, and we're going to know exactly what Wikipedia article they correspond to. So what does that what does that mean for the future? Maybe a biographical note in an authority record in the future is the Wikipedia article, because you'll know exactly what the Wikipedia article it is, and it can just pull the content or whatever. There's a lot of implications that we need to think about. But really, this kind of linking of data is the future of cultural institutions and the metadata. And obviously for the National Archives and for any institution, we don't want to just link authority records. We want to link the actual documents themselves or the actual holdings to Wikipedia articles about them, and that will allow the same sort of thing. Second, I wanted to mention QRpedia. We haven't had the chance to use QR codes at the National Archives because of the photography restrictions, because the documents are sensitive. But this is a really exciting project where QRpedia is an app that allows you to create QR codes that go to the Wikipedia article in the language of the mobile phone that's scanning them. So you can create a QR code in your institution, and somebody can scan them, and it'll take them to the French article about that article or whatever. So this is a picture of QRpedia in use at the Children's Museum of Indianapolis. That's Jimmy Whale scanning it. And these are some examples of other institutions that have used it. Most recently, the Congressional Cemetery here in DC. There are little QR codes on poles next to gravestones in the cemetery now. This is cool not just because people can now visit the Wikipedia articles and get that information, but it's also, it's a real enticement for the Wikipedia community to build those articles, because there are people that are going to be using them. So one of the really exciting uses of QRpedia is Monmouthpedia. Monmouth is a small historical town in Wales, and they're now the first Wikipedia town in the world. So this is a picture of an actual a permanent installation of a QR code outside their Shire Hall, which has its own Wikipedia article, and they've essentially created a whole town effort, educating citizens how to edit Wikipedia, how to improve the content related to their own town, and then everything is marked, and the town has been blanketed with these QR codes. So it's a really exciting effort that kind of goes beyond just the cultural institution world, but how it can really saturate the real world in general with these links to further information online. So I just wanted to, hopefully you've kind of realized that this GLAM-Wiki effort is a growing global movement of cultural institutions getting involved with Wikipedia. These are some of the most recent, these are some of the most prominent institutions that have had Wikipedians in residence. And you'll see some of the most recent ones: British Library, Consumer Reports, and OCLC. Those are the three ones that have come out in the last few months, I think. But hopefully you've also seen that there's a lot of discrete activities like an editathon or uploading images or just editing Wikipedia, sharing your expertise, that any institution can contribute without needing a Wikipedian in residence like me inside. So I wanted to kind of wrap up by talking about what is a Wikipedian. Wikipedia has a huge array of topics. You might think people need to have a kind of a technical savvy, a tolerance for ambiguity, because it's a wiki and it's all kind of community-driven processes and collaborative skills, right? Actually, this slide is formatted this way for a reason, because this is actually David Ferrio's definition of what an archivist is. I took out the things that would give it away, but he wrote this blog post a few months ago, and he was really emphasizing that in the future, archives are really undergoing a transformation in the digital. We have to deal with the kind of new digital world, collaborating, engaging with the public. And so when I read this, the first thing that came to mind was, this is exactly how I describe a Wikipedian, and that's how he's describing archivists. So I guess what I want to suggest here is not just that that Wikipedians should be archivists or should work with archives, but that archives should be Wikipedians, and obviously not just archives, but cultural institutions in general. So this is kind of the approach that we've taken in the National Archives. This is a quote from Mark Codeney, who is the author of the Newsweek Tumblr, which was one of the original adopters and the early adopters of Tumblr, and Newsweek itself, was not doing so well in the print media, but the Tumblr really took off. And so his advice for publishers, but really is relevant to any of us, is the most important thing for any publisher is to first be a full participating member of the community, and that the main focus should be on meeting the needs of that community. The reason I say that is because we have the luxury of being able to the National Archives or any cultural institution to be a full participating member of Wikipedia, because our interests really have such an alignment, and so we can do that without any conflict, and that's really the best way to get involved. So the future, there is really a small pool of Wikipedians that can be this involved, spending their days working with cultural institutions. So really the future is cultural institutions helping themselves and gaining kind of institutional knowledge about how to work with Wikipedia. So that's what a lot of us are working on now, is creating what we're calling the GLAM-Wiki US Consortium, which would kind of help build best practices and create documentation for people, the other cultural institutions that are just getting involved. But that's obviously what we need to work on now to make this really a possibility. But and that's all I have. We have some time for questions. I just put this up on the board. There's us.glamwiki.org is where you can go, which are kind of our web presence for cultural institutions that are interested. And there's a lot of documentation there, how-tos and case studies, and our kind of general contact information is glam@wikimedia.org, and there's some other social media stuff there if you're interested. So if we have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I was curious about how the domain issue plays into how Wikipedia entries that fall after search. I've noticed that they often are the first listing after one does a search. And I don't expect you to give away all your inside secrets in the public, but in the Wikipedia's
Okay, so the question was about why Wikipedia is, comes up so highly in search results. I think actually that Wikipedia is not really that savvy about trying to come up highly in search results, and really the reason it does is, well, I guess you kind of asked, how big is it? There's over 4 million articles on the English Wikipedia alone, and like 200 other languages of varying sizes. But really the reason is, at least, the way the search engines work is that they're looking for the things that are the most linked to, they're using the context of the rest of the internet to judge what gets ranked most highly. So it's kind of just because Wikipedia is so ubiquitous on the web already, then it gets ranked highly. But I mean, I don't think they really try very hard to do that. So it's just kind of natural. Yeah.
So do we have a Wikipedian in residence at the Library of Congress?
So at Wikimania's opening reception in the library in the Great Hall, the World Digital Library announced that they were starting the process. So I met a few weeks ago with somebody from the World Digital Library to talk about my experiences. I think they're still in the kind of the early stages of figuring out what the job description is going to be and all that kind of stuff. But they've made the announcement. There will be a Wikipedian resident at the World Digital Library. So, yeah.
I'm a little confused. Can you explain the actual process? So, for example, you do a scan-a-thon.
Yes.
But it isn't just scanning. It goes into Wikisource, and then it's edited and tagged in Wikisource, and then moved over to Wikipedia. I'm confused about
Okay.
the flow of the document into Wikipedia.
Okay. The question was about how after we scan things, really like what we do with it, how it all works. And I guess I would say, so we really if we have a scan-a-thon, somebody scans a document, and really the only thing that we ask, that the whole point of the event is for them to go home and upload that file, which goes to Wikimedia Commons, the file repository. And then what that means for us is we're tracking those uploads. So or hopefully actually in the future we'll just be copying those files to a drive before they leave the building so we can have them. And so we can take those files, we use them in our catalog for new item level descriptions. But what happens to it on the whole Wikimedia side, it really depends on the document itself or the Wikipedian who scanned it. Like the image I showed of Nicole, she was a really interesting subject, and somebody did a little research about her and wrote an article about her, and that image is in that article. Other things, may just get uploaded, and that's the end, and they're sitting there maybe to be used at some point in the future or whatever. If it's a textual document, it may also get transcribed, or it's there in order for someone to try transcribe it at some point. But really, that's all there is to it.
So things can exist in Wikimedia Commons.
Yeah, maybe I wasn't that clear. But that's actually the point of Wikimedia Commons is, when I say it's the file repository, it's because there's all these other Wikimedia projects, or there's Wikipedias in all these different languages. So it's the central place where you upload files, and then you can use them in any other project. Yeah. Yeah.
Assuming that there will be more than one person working on Wikimedia here in the library, and perhaps it's a team of people
That'd be nice.
working on the job, are there going to be records management issues either with Wikimedia or social media creation in general, just so we can keep that in the back of our minds and say, oh yeah, we need to pay attention to this?
That's probably a question that I wouldn't be very good at answering. And I'm sure, different agencies would do things differently anyway. I know that the National Archives has policies regarding its tweets and that kind of stuff. But so far, I don't think we've actually put much thought into how that works for Wikipedia. I mean, we are lucky in that everything that occurs on Wikipedia, every edit, every revision is saved. You can click on the history tab on an article and see every past revision. So I guess at some point maybe we'll go back. But no, that's something that definitely maybe needs to be thought about a little bit more. Yes.
Are you working with audiovisual files at NARA to get into Wikipedia articles?
That's definitely something that we definitely can and maybe should. Right now we've been working with a lot of the low-hanging fruit. I know there's another project, the FedFlix project, which Katie Filbert from Wikimedia DC has also been working with, and they've been coming to the National Archives and copying all of the video files that are digitized on disk but not online. So copying them onto new DVDs and uploading them to Internet Archive or places like that. So it's kind of a similar citizen archivist effort, but we haven't yet, I don't think those files are yet in Wikipedia, but certainly if there's anything that, that would be useful in a Wikipedia article, that's something that we're interested in uploading as soon as we figure out how. Are we out of time? Or?
Just approaching the editorial integrity issue from a slightly different perspective.
Sure.
Think of when Wikipedia got off the ground and today, and just focus on factual accuracy. Could you give us your impressions of factual accuracy of the average Wikipedia article at the beginning and the average factual accuracy of how it is today? And could you maybe, if you have a rough idea, just compare that to, say, the journal for a group of specialists, such as the Journal for the American Association?
I think there have been a lot of comparative studies, especially more recently. It's increasing between Wikipedia and similar sources like Encyclopedia Britannica, and I obviously haven't memorized them all, but I do know that they're basically every study that comes out, it's usually they're about the same. It's the assumption would be that maybe there's that maybe Wikipedia should be less reliable, but in reality there isn't that much of a gulf between Wikipedia and more traditional sources. And I'm sure you could, if you extended that study into the past, although I don't think that early on it was studied intensively, the quality increases. But I think really the important point is that, and there's a page on Wikipedia about errors in errors in Encyclopedia Britannica that editors have compiled, because the kind of the essential point is when you discover an error in Wikipedia, you can fix it and it's done. When you discover an error in a print source, or even the Encyclopedia Britannica isn't really a print source anymore, I guess, since they stopped selling their print version, but they're still not very good at propagating corrections or updating articles to Encyclopedia Britannica online, because they don't have an online community editing. They just have editors, paid online editors, I guess. So really, the idea is, the more watchers you have, the more people that you have patrolling, it's kind of, there's an innate self-correcting procedure. But yes.
On that same point, is there any kind of an appeal process when the corrections themselves are changed back?
Yes. No, yes, and that's an important point, because really every Wikipedia article is dynamic. And this is something that sometimes maybe some cultural institutions that have tried to get involved, or really anybody, but like something that I hear a lot from people is, I made this change and it was reversed. Wikipedia didn't accept my change. That's not actually what happened. Because the great thing about Wikipedia is each of us, none of us has more authority than the other. So if you make a change and someone disagrees with it and changes it back, you have recourse. What your recourse is to open a dialogue. You talk with them. Every editor has their own discussion page, and the content on Wikipedia articles is decided by consensus, and that's all there is to it. And so, there may be, it's the internet, not everybody is reasonable. Maybe there's an unreasonable person. Then there are community processes for, getting a third opinion, or, all these sorts of things. But really, it's all decided based on the community's own, internal discussion, things like that. I mean, if somebody's like a terrible person, they might eventually get banned or something. But really, it's all about, that happens. It's the internet. But really, it's all about, figuring out the consensus on the basis of the project's own content guidelines and things like that. You go to what do the sources say, that sorts of things. So.
The instances that I'm aware of are in spite of what the sources say.
Right.
And while no one has greater authority than anybody else, some people have a lot more persistence than others.
It's true. I mean, it's true, and that's kind of the nature of the project. But I mean, in general, it works. We like to say it works in practice, but not in theory. So I think really, as long as people are engaging in good faith, it really, in the end, it turns out well. That's kind of what we discovered. So I don't know if I don't have much of a better answer than that, but it does work. Okay, I think we're out of time.
We're out of time, Dominic. Thank you so much.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.